Celsius. This
meeting is being recorded.
Lower than the Ag Guide recommendations. Our group has also looked at sows. Sows are all grouped together in the Ag Guide as greater than 100 kilograms. There is a footnote in the Ag Guide that they are aware that gestation plays a part in the preferred temperature of sows, but they at that point did not have any research to give recommendations based on gestation. Our current research does show that gestation makes a difference. For open and mid-gestating sows, sows prefer 13.2 to 16.4 degrees Celsius, and late gestating sows actually prefer slightly cooler at 12.6 to 15.6 degrees Celsius. This is again at the low end of the Ag Guide recommendations. And before our boar study, there had been no current boar research done on thermal preference. So our objective was to evaluate the thermal preference range of sexually mature Duroc, Landrace, and Yorkshire boars, and we hypothesized that their thermal preference range would be lower than what is currently recommended, as we saw in those pre-nursery and sow pigs. We had 18 boars. We had Duroc, Landrace, and Yorkshire breeds. These breeds are very common across the globe. Our 18 pigs overall had an average body weight of 186 kilograms, and all 18 averaged 8.5 months of age. We do know that boars become reproductively active around 6 months of age, and the boars that we used were starting to be collected. So our group created 2 thermal apparatuses for the sow study that was referenced earlier. We are again using these same thermal apparatuses for the boar study in a similar experimental design. The 2 thermal apparatuses we used were 12.2 by 1.5 meters. Using air conditioning units and ceramic heat bulbs, we tried to get a temperature gradient between 10 and 30 degrees Celsius, and we tried to get certain temperatures in each section. We had 5 different sections, and these are their target temperatures for each section. Here are some photos of the thermal apparatuses themselves. In each of the 5 sections were thermal loggers where we were able to collect temperature. There were also cameras so that we could record the boar's location and their behavior and postures. The boars were able to have water in each section, and there was only 1 boar per thermal apparatus at a time. So when boars were put into the thermal apparatuses, they were given 24 hours to acclimate to their new environment. They were then taken out for around 3 hours so that they could eat their daily allotment of feed, and then we could clean the thermal apparatuses. When they were returned to the same thermal apparatus that they had been in previously, they were then in the apparatuses for 24 hours of testing. Now, during this whole time, we did record video and temperatures, but we are only looking at the 24 hours of testing. For behaviors, we looked at inactive, active, and other. Inactive was when the animal was motionless or stationary. When the animal was walking, engaging with the environment, or drinking, it was active. And other was when the animal was defecating or we could not determine what the behavior was. For posture, when we were looking at lying, we were looking if the animal was holding up its body at all with any of its feet. Standing was when it was using all 4 feet to stand up, and other did include kneeling, sitting, and couldn't be determined. Now for lying, or for the postures and behavior, they were recorded every 15 minutes. The location of what section the boar was in was also recorded every 15 minutes, so that then we could get the corresponding temperature for that location and that time. We did run GLMs in JUMP. We have a cubic regression model for the behavior and posture data to find the peak thermal preference and range. We did have to remove one landrace boar from the study due to ill health, and all the data was log 10 transformed. So boars spent 78% of their time inactive, which is a huge chunk of their time. They spent around 20% active and less than 3% in the other category. Since the other category was so low, active and inactive made up most of our time budget. However, then say if the boars had spent more time inactive, that would then directly make the active category decrease. So in JUMP, we had to exclude active and other, so our time budget was not 100%. So we're just looking at the inactive behavior. I'd like to first point out that our y-axis is back transformed, so you could more easily observe it. And I will again reiterate that this is a cubic regression, as we're going to see a curved line and not a straight line. Boars spent the most time inactive at 25.5 degrees Celsius, as seen in the vertical black line. Their peak thermal range was 24.1 to 26.9 degrees Celsius, as seen in the green box. And this is on the far end of our ag guide suggestions of 10 to 25 degrees Celsius. Boars spent 80% of their time lying down. They spent a little less than 20% standing and around 4% in the other category. So again, here we had to exclude standing and other when running our analyses so that our time budget did not equal 100%. So we are just looking at the lying behavior here, or posture. And since we're only looking at this lying posture and the inactive behavior, these behavior and postures are actually when the boar is spending a lot of their time sleeping or in a relaxed position. When they are in their active and standing, they're usually exploring the environment, or they are getting away from their sleeping quarters so that they can defecate elsewhere. So we are really interested in this lying and inactive temperature peak, as that is where they spend most of their time and they're in a relaxed state. Boars spent the most time lying at 25.9 degrees Celsius, seen in the vertical black line. Their peak thermal range was 24.5 to 27.3 degrees Celsius. And this is, again, at the far end of the ag guide suggestions of 10 to 25 degrees Celsius.
You have 2 minutes left.
Okay, thank you. We did not see any significant differences for breed and weight in the behavior or posture categories. And to conclude, we see that we actually are on the higher end of the ag guide recommendations compared to the pre-nursery and sows, which were on the lower end. So our hypothesis was actually the opposite of what we thought and what we see here. So what is next? We have ran grow finish pigs through these thermal apparatuses and 3 different reps to hit the grow finish weight categories. We are still going through the video and data for that, but we're excited to see what it tells us. And I'd like to thank everyone who helped out with this study, especially the National Institute of Food and Agriculture grant that made this study possible. And with that, I'll take any questions.
One question. So yes.
Okay, thank you. Frank Tertus from Belgium. If I understand correctly, in your testing pen, it was always the extreme temperature at one side of the pen, either the extreme right-hand side or the left-hand side. But isn't it possible that they have side preferences irrespective of the temperature, and that might bias your results?
Yes, we wanted to make sure that we did not have a side bias. So when looking at our temperature, we did try to get a larger range than what we were trying to expect. So as for the sows, when we were using those same thermal apparatuses, they were actually on the cold end. And now when the boars, we were surprised to see them on the high end. When watching the video, we did make note of where they were at to make sure we didn't have a side bias. We did not see any bias when looking at the video.
Thank you very much for a really nice presentation. So now we have to go to the next one. So I would like to welcome Van der Eyck. Ah, it's you. We know. So yes, I'm not going to say anything more. I think it's better that you
I
present
will,
it. Yes.
yeah, sure. So first of all, my apologies for the title of my talk, which didn't include the species. So it's on broilers. So if you want to leave, you are still allowed to do so now. So yeah, my name is Irine van der Eyck. I'm a researcher at the Animal Health and Welfare Group of Wageningen Livestock Research. And today I'm actually very excited to present to you the first experiment within our public-private partnership called FunctiLight, which is focusing on functional light provisioning for both broilers and layer pullets, and how to improve their performance and, more importantly, their welfare. But today I will focus on the first experiment where we looked at light intensity preference of broilers in relation to breed, age, and their behavior. Is this working? Oh, yeah. Okay. So light is an important part of broiler management, and actually a lot of studies show that it affects performance, behavior, and health. And light consists of different aspects. So you have, of course, the spectrum, which is the color of ultraviolet light. Then you have the light intensity, which is the brightness of very bright or dim light. And then there's a lot of variation. So not only during the day, where you can, for example, think of a very sunny day, but then there's a cloud crossing the sun and becomes darker, but also with age and within the house. So this you can actually see in the bottom picture with a broiler house with windows, where you see that beneath the windows, the light intensity, the light is a lot brighter than other areas. And the same you can imagine for lights being installed. And then we also have the schedule, so the light dark periods. So actually quite some studies already show that light intensity affects behavior, or when we compare high intensities, which can range between 20 to 200 lux, to low intensities, which range between 1 and 6 lux, we see that broilers are more active. They show more preening, foraging, eating, and they spend less time on resting. And actually, there's also one study that showed when broilers are housed at high intensities, the behavioral synchronization is increased. So these are just two pictures from our experiment, where in the top picture, there's a brighter area where you can see chicks eating and foraging, and below is a darker area where they are resting. But my camera is adjusting for the brightness, so you cannot really see the difference. So there have actually been two studies to date on light intensity preference, where both find similar results. that this preference for light intensity actually depends on age, where both see that higher intensities are preferred when young compared to older ages. And the preference also depends on behavior. So at higher intensities, they are showing more locomotor behaviors and eating and drinking. So for example, Davies et al. Found that feeding, drinking, litter-directed activity and locomotion was shown more at 200 lux, while resting and perching was shown more at 6 lux. So these are only 2 studies to date. So the light intensity preference testing is still scarce. And these studies only included fast growing broilers, but now we have slower growing broilers as well. So slower growing broilers are increasingly used in meat production today, and especially in Northwestern Europe. And they have a growth rate of 50 grams or less per day compared to the fast growing broilers that have a growth rate of 60 grams or more. And actually quite some studies already have looked into the differences between these fast and slower growing broilers. And we see a lot of differences in behavior. So slower growing broilers are showing more walking, standing, foraging, and aggressive behavior, while they are showing less eating and sitting behavior compared to fast growing broilers. So these differences in behavior might also cause breeds to respond differently to these light intensities. So this is actually what was the aim of our studies, to determine the preference of both fast and slower growing broilers for different light intensities, taking into account their age, the time of day, and also their behavior. So yeah, we used fast and slower growing broilers. We had the Ross 308 as a fast growing, and then the Hubbard J757 as slower growing. And both were housed in groups of 12 with 50-15 male-female distribution. And we per pen, and then we had 8 pens per breed, so 8 repetitions. So each pen consisted of 4 areas where the different light intensities were given. And we included the 0.2 lux as kind of a normal situation in USA. We had the 20 lux, which is European legislation. We included 50 lux because this is part of the European chicken commitment. And we had 1,000 lux to have very contrasting high intensity level. And we tried to mimic daylight, and this was the highest achievable with the lights we used. And then before I forget, there's an opening in the middle from which the chickens could move from one area to the other. So each area included all resources. So we provided a feeder, which you can see here, a perch, drinkers, and then there's a hay rack underneath here. And these types of enrichment were included to make sure that the chicks performed a wide variety of behaviors to see how they differ in the different intensities. And this is just maybe a clearer overview with the opening in the center and then all the 4 intensity areas being the same in layout. So we performed group observations, so live observations via instantaneous scan sampling. And this was performed at 5 similar body weights, so 5 times per breed, but at different ages, of course, because they're growing at a different rate. And we grouped behaviors into categories. And what is important to note with the results I'm showing is these are percentages expressed as the total number of birds in a specific area, so not the total number of birds in the pen. So we grouped eating and drinking into ingestion, inactive and perching as inactive. Standing was a separate category. Locomotion included play and locomotion. Foraging included foraging, explorative, and ground pecking. And then comfort included comfort and dust bathing. Then I'm also going to show some animal detection methods. which is already quite a topic of the day. So we also mounted cameras on top of each pen, and we used these recordings to count the number of chicks in each area at similar ages. And we did this 2 days per week, where we sampled 1 frame every 5 minutes of the light periods. So I did not train this algorithm. Thomas, my colleague, did this, and he trained it on approximately 1,200 annotated images, where we made sure that the prediction or chick detection was only included or counted when the accuracy was above 90%. And then we also made sure that the percentage of non-detected chickens was not above 25%. And in the table below, you can see the F1 score, which is a score for performance, where 1 is very high and 0 is very low for the different areas and also different ages. So we made sure that the algorithm was performing well enough for all these ages and areas. And this is just one image to show you what it looked like. So we have the 4 areas, and then the center as a separate counted area, and the chicks are shown with a orange bounding box. So we measured the light intensities that we achieved in the end, which are actually shown with these red dots. And this is just to show you that the darkest area that we included was a bit brighter than we aimed, and the other intensities were a bit lower than we aimed. So for behavior, we actually found no interactions between breed and intensity, and also no interactions between body weight and intensity. So I'm going to show you the results over breeds and over, oh shit, I have to hurry. Over breeds and over body weights. So most importantly is that chicks are showing ingestion most in the highest intensity area, while the opposite is found in the for inactivity. And then for standing, we see that this is mostly shown at 20 logs, which is quite a bit random result. For locomotion and foraging, we see that both these behaviors are shown most at the 1,000 logs and less at the darker areas. And actually, we found no intensity effect on comfort. So I'm just, I just quickly wanted to show this. These are the results based on counts, but they still need to be analyzed. But what you can see is that fast-growing broilers seem to prefer the highest intensity when young, which moves to the darker intensities when older, and they don't have a clear preference for any of those there. For Hubbard, we see a similar relation, but less clear preference for the highest intensity, and a more clear preference for the 0.2 lux. So our behavior results are actually quite similar to what was found previously with fast-growing broilers, and we do not see that breeds actually differ in behavior shown at certain intensities. Then for the initial results I showed you for the counts, we see some differences between breeds, which is actually in agreement with previous studies, where there is a preference for darker intensities when old, which might be related to their higher body weight and them showing more resting. So we see that they seem to differ in light intensity preference with age, but this still needs to be analyzed. And in that case, it would be important to adopt age and breed specific light intensity programs in commercial practice. So I just would like to quickly acknowledge the partners within the FunctiLight project. And then I would like to thank you for attention, and I'll be happy to answer questions.
We actually do not have time now for questions.
Okay, just.
We can take, if there is one question, we can take that, of course. Boss, yes. The big boss.
I wouldn't say that. For the setup, Irina, I think it's interesting because this would also be something I think to explore for commercial conditions, to offer variation in light environment, because you see these preferences, like in the aviaries, in the laying hens, there's also darker on the bottom, lighter on the top.
Yeah.
So is that something you are exploring towards practical application? Or
Yes, very nice that you asked this question because it was actually
was not
something I
rehearsed,
wanted to mention. This is the first experiment within this Functilight project, but we are also going towards commercial practice where we want to see if you provide certain light aspects in certain areas where you can think of color and intensity variation, whether that promotes certain behaviors also with the laying hens actually. Yeah. Work in progress.
So we can have. So the next presentation is going to be presented by Vinicius Foncella about the goats. So he's going to be online, as I was informed now. It's online or not? So it's not online. Okay. So shall we just drop it? We can just go. Yeah. Then we can just go to the next one. It's Rachel Kohn. Caroline, yes, called.
I'm gonna change.
Preventing social behavior and preparing certain levels about, yeah. So is Caroline here?
Yeah, can you see my screen now? Or?
Yes. Yeah, we can see you. Yes.
Okay, great. Good afternoon, everybody. I'm Caroline Clouard. I'm a scientist at the INRAE in France. And today I'm going to talk to you about social behavior in suckling piglets and its potential association with their adaptation to weaning and social mixing on farm.
Excuse me, Caroline.
Yes?
Can you just put it in the presentation mode?
Oh, sorry. Because it is on my screen, so.
Just press F5.
Yes, but I see it on. Wait, maybe I don't share this the good screen. Is it better now?
No, it's still the same.
Here?
It's okay.
Yes, it's okay now.
Yes, okay, sorry. As you may well know, the pig is a highly social species. In semi-natural condition, it lives in stable social groups, and it expresses a large variety of social behaviors. So among those, we found agonistic behaviors such as aggression and escape behavior. And those behaviors have been well characterized because we've been trying to reduce them on farm because they can be harmful and stressful for the animals. But there are also social positive behaviors such as social nosing, allo-grooming, or social play. And those behaviors have received more recent research attention. So we know a bit less about their function, but authors suggest that they might be involved in affiliation, group cohesion, or social recognition. So they might be important for positive welfare on farm. So given the high social nature of the pig, the opportunity for the animal to express positive social behavior and to live in stable social group is important for positive welfare on farm. However, on farm, pigs are subjected to many social challenges, and the major one is weaning. At weaning, piglets are separated quite abruptly from the mother, and they are usually mixed with piglets from other litters. So that induces an intense social stress, and the pig need to adapt to these new conditions. So during this adaptation period, pigs show changes in their behavior, So we usually observe an increase in aggression to establish the hierarchy, together with a decrease in activity in general. Usually these behavioral changes are associated with physiological responses that can be associated with decreased health status, such as inflammatory responses or increase in oxidative stress. However, we know that there is a large variability between individuals in their capacity to adapt to this challenge, which led researchers to try and identify early markers of this adaptation to winning, with the final aim to try and identify animals that may be more at risk to be poorly adapted to winning stress. So with that in mind, we try to characterize social behavior in young piglets before and after winning to get more knowledge on social behaviors. We also try to assess whether pre-winning social behavior may help to predict adaptation to social mixing at winning. And we also try to identify biomarkers of adaptation to winning, and we focused on peripheral serotonin. So we focus on serotonin because we know that central serotonin, the central serotonin system has an active role in the regulation of social behavior in mammals. But we don't really know, or at least there is controversy on the association between central serotonin and peripheral serotonin. So we wanted to know if peripheral serotonin can be a good marker of social behavior as well. So we conducted the experiment in an organic pig farm of the ISAE in central France. In this farm, piglets are kept with the sows in free farrowing pens with straw bedding and outdoor access, and they are kept with the sow until 48 days of age. We followed 12 litters and we selected 6 piglets per litter, which resulted in 72 focal piglets for the experiment. And at winning, piglets were divided in 4 pens of 30 piglets, again in pens with deep straw bedding and outdoor access. And we kept the 6 focal piglets of 3 liters in the same pen, so we had 4 pens with 18 focal piglets per pen. Regarding the measurements, we measure social related parameters 1 week before winning. So we draw blood at day 41 to measure platelet serotonin level. And the day after, we recorded social interaction continuously for 8 hours. So in the social interaction, we recorded social nosing, aggression, and also social locomotor play and play fight behavior. We recorded behavioral and physiological responses to winning by drawing blood 24 hours after winning to measure a variety of health-related blood parameters, such as white blood cells, hydroperoxides as a marker of oxidative stress, aptoglobin as a marker of inflammation, and again, serotonin level. And during 2 consecutive days after the sampling, we scored social interaction using continuous sampling and behavioral activities using scan sampling. And finally, we weighed the pigs at winning and 20 days later to have an evaluation of weight gain after winning. So moving on to the results, concerning the pre-winning social parameters, what we observed is that piglet expressed the majority of social positive behaviors, namely social nosing, which was followed by play behavior with play fight and locomotor social play, and aggression that was at a really low rate. We found that males expressed more aggression and more play fight behavior than female. Regarding platelet level, we didn't find any sex effects, but I show you this graph to show you that the values that we found were consistent with the literature, which allowed us to validate our analytical method. Regarding the behavioral responses to winning, so again, we scored social behaviors and we observed that even after social mixing, piglet expressed a majority of social nosing behavior. although aggression increased compared to pre-weaning. And we observed as well a complete disappearance of play behavior after weaning during the 48 hours after weaning. Again, male expressed more aggressive behavior than female. Regarding the behavioral activities, what we found is that piglets were mainly inactive, spent 60 to 70% of time inactive, followed by pen exploration, locomotion, and ingestive behavior, and at the very end, social behavior. Here is just to show you a brief overview of all the health-related blood parameters that we measured 24 hours after weaning. So in addition to daily weight gain, we had an indicator of inflammation, stress oxidation, and also white blood cells to give an idea of immune activation after weaning. So here I'm going to present you the association between the early pre-weaning social parameters and response to weaning. So we use covariance linear model in which the pre-weaning social parameters were included as explanatory variables. And we did it for each response variable that were the weaning responses. And each time it gives us a covariance coefficient that can be, if it's positive, it's a positive association, and if it's negative, it's a negative association. So it's going to be in blue. So social nosing before weaning was positively associated with social nosing after weaning, and tended to be positively associated with the total number of interaction and the time spent exploring the pen. And it was negatively associated with inactivity after weaning. We also found that locomotor play before weaning was positively associated with the time spent walking in the pen after weaning. And it was also positively associated with marker of oxidative stress. We found a few associations with serotonin level before weaning. So serotonin before weaning was positively associated with serotonin after weaning. It was also positively associated with weight gain after weaning, and with a lymphocyte to neutrophil ratio, which suggests a decreased immune reactivity to stress. We also found that serotonin before weaning was negatively associated with aggression level and with oxidative stress. We also found an association between aggression and inactivity, but it was just a trend, so I will not really discuss it further. So to conclude, we found that in a stable social context or after social mixing, pig exhibits a high level of social positive behavior, which suggests that this behavior is important for welfare on farm. We also found that dominance-related behaviors such as aggression and also play fight behavior are influenced by sexual dimorphism. And we also found that even in close to optimal condition, we have a complete disappearance of social play after weaning, which suggests that weaning is still really stressful in this condition for the piglets. We found that social exploration before weaning resulted in piglets that were more active and more exploratory at weaning, which suggests that maybe those pigs were more motivated to explore, and which suggests that may be an indicator of better welfare after weaning. We also found that piglets that played a lot before weaning were more mobile at weaning, which may be due by the role of social play in motor development, or which may just show an increased motivation to move in those piglets. However, those piglets have higher oxidative stress level, but we know that oxidative stress is related to glucocorticoid production. So it might be that the piglets that were playing a lot before weaning were more stressed by the cessation of play after weaning. And finally, we found that platelet serotonin level before weaning resulted in piglets that were less aggressive after weaning. So it support previous findings that there is a negative association between peripheral and central serotonin level and aggression in mammals. And those piglets were also more healthy with less oxidative stress and immune activation. So that may be due to the anti-oxidative properties of serotonin and maybe its role in immune response in other animals. So to conclude, we posit that maybe positive social behaviors and blood serotonin level before weaning might be good indicator of better health status or better behavioral adaptation to social stress and deserve more research attention. Thank you for your attention.
You had really good timing, so thank you, Caroline. You prepared very well. So if we have some questions for the audience, yes, we have it.
Hi, Mathilde Coutin from Aarhus University. Thank you, Caroline, for a very nice presentation. You mentioned that you selected piglets to be included in the experiment. I was just wondering if you can tell us more about the selection criteria and whether the piglets that were included had a difference in terms of weight or health status.
Yeah, so thank you for your question. We selected male and female in equal proportion. And we tried to add piglets that were representative of the weight of the litter. So we had 2 average weight piglets and 2 big and 2 small piglets. But we kept only piglets that were relatively healthy. So yeah, that was the criteria.
Thank you.
You have another question for the audience? I was just wondering a little bit about it's a quite nice topic, and do you think that these things could be implemented also maybe in the breeding horse, or what its possibility, or did you check it up already or discussed or something like that?
So you asking me about the implementation of those results on farm, or? Yeah, well, for now, I see it more like an acquisition of knowledge, because as I said in the introduction, we don't really know much about the function of social behavior, at least positive social behavior. And I was trying to try and see if they are relevant for adaptation to challenges. But for now, I don't really see any implication for really farmers, and I don't have any suggestion for them, but I just think that maybe social positive behavior should be investigated a bit further, because somehow it's associated with health, and so yeah.
Thank you very much, and we can applaud.
Thank you.
And I hope I will read a little bit more of your work in the future. This is most common. And now I would like to welcome Inge-Lisa Andersen. She's my boss, actually.
I knew you
So I have to be really fine now. So Inge-Lisa, welcome to the audience.
It's nice to see so many people this late in the afternoon, so I hope I can have your attention for a while. I'm going to present some of our results from a rather big field survey. I've been working with sows and piglets since '94, but this is actually the first project I have in finishing pigs. I had some experience with wean pigs, but this is the first time we actually visit Norwegian farms on finishing pigs, and it's been a very interesting journey so far. So this study is about welfare and performance of finishing pigs and how this is affected by group size, density, and production system based on field data. This project is in close collaboration with the meat industry, with Natura, and also we got funding from the Research Council. And the way we approach it is that we try to look at how the situation is now, today, with the welfare situation in our farms. And then we also have to take the challenge to say something about the future. So this is a picture that I used to bring with the advisors from the pig industry. And I asked them, is this the environment that you see for finishing pigs in the future? Because these pictures represent the standard that is in Norway today with rather small pens, rather small groups. They have rectangular pens with 1/3 of slatted floors usually. And this is from a farm that is following the legislations and actually is somewhat better than the legislations. And we should ask ourselves as ethologists, when we know a lot about the behavioral needs of the species, is this the kind of environment that we find stimulating enough for the pigs to have good welfare? I think it's a relevant question. And we see for finishing pigs that they start off with quite a lot of space, but they end up in week 12 or 13 with very little space. So we see that the pigs become more and more passive. But when we compare this with, for instance, outdoor pigs, we see we get a totally different picture. They remain active throughout the whole period. So aim, predictions, and setup for the field survey is a little bit different from what the aim is for the present study. We have collected data and developed a welfare protocol. The industry wants us to develop something that they can do within 1.5 hours per farm. So we had to make kind of rough estimates, and what we have done is to include individual welfare indicators, such as bite marks on body, ears, and tail. We looked at hernia, movement disorders, body condition score, and we also did a human approach test in all those 87 farms that we visited. And from those 87 farms, we have picked out 8 pens from each farm, and from each pen, then a maximum of 10 pigs that were scored for a lot of individual parameters. We also have included some resource-based measures, but that's not the topic of today. I just wanted to mention that this is a part of a huge study. So based on the data from this field survey of 87 farms in 4 different regions in Norway, we aim to investigate the effects of group size, animal densities, and different feeding regimes on selected welfare parameters and performance in finishing pigs. Some of the predictions, we predicted that the proportion of bite marks on ears and body would decline with increasing group size due to a larger proportion of pigs becoming less aggressive and offensive or proactive in larger groups. That has been documented in quite a few studies before. We also predicted that proportion of pigs with bite marks on tail would not be affected by group size or floor space per se, because this tail biting is not really related to aggression. And we predicted proportion of pigs with bite marks on ears and body that would decline with increasing animal density, which is floor space in this particular study, due to smaller individual space. And we did a human approach test in these 8 pens in every farm. And then we predicted to find that the proportion of pigs avoiding or fleeing from an unfamiliar human would decrease with increasing group size due to less overall individual contact with humans in larger groups and a greater total space, allowing more pigs to get away from the human. We didn't expect a clear relationship between animal density and fear of humans, and although some studies have shown effects of group size and animal density on weight gain and feed efficiency, others have not done so. And this is also why we did not have really clear prediction on that. So a little bit about the data from these 87 farms. We have almost 6,000 pigs in total from this study. The group size, mean group size in Norwegian farms, as you see, is really small. It's 11.6 pigs per pen, and very few actually have large groups. And also most of the farmers would follow the legislations, which says for the final stage of finishing pigs, you need 1 square meter per pig. That's according to legislations. And we see that the average for these 87 farms were 1.3. So they choose to be a bit above average. But then again, having said that, these 87 farms are probably not the worst ones because they volunteered to be a part of this. And then I gave also some figures in the table below there. I just wanted to give you some idea how the incidence of like movement disorders and hernia is rather low in this herd. But bite marks on tail, 7.8% of the piglets had that. We didn't differentiate according to the severity of bite marks on the field survey. We've done that in experimental work, but to make it easier in on-farm study, we didn't. We just measured if they had it or not. So the bite marks, the prevalence of the bite marks are somewhat higher than the national average, which is around 3 to 4%. But then again, the slaughterhouses just register short tails and bleeding tails, whereas we registered every bite mark. So it's a little bit different. But overall, the pigs were quite contact seeking. There were not so many farms that had problem with fearful pigs, so that they were quite eager to contact humans, and which is a good thing. Then to the main results, if we see these p-values that are yellow, those are the significant effects. So we did find more significant effects of group size than space, floor space per se, on fear and number of proportion of pigs with bite marks on tail, ears, and body. We also found a negative effect of floor space on bite marks of the rest of the body, which means that the lower the space, the more bite marks, which is not so, I mean, that's quite expected. We also saw a result that vet feed resulted in lower proportional pigs with bite marks on the body. So, but we didn't have any effects on the feeding regime regarding whether it was restrictive versus ad libitum feeding. So those are the main results. In the main analysis, we're going to make a paper of this. So I skipped the outdoor farms, but I included it we included it in the original field survey because I wanted to see some more variation. Because in fact, the indoor farming in Norway, it's not such big variation in space per animal. They stick to the legislations, and so we didn't have enough variation in space and these things. And we included 2 really professional outdoor farms just to see in comparison what is the level, how many pigs have body lesions and ear lesions and tail biting and so on. Here we see that in outdoor farms, we didn't find any pigs with bite marks on ears or tails. So that is quite interesting. However, there were some bite marks on the body due to, for instance, they compete for access to the outdoor huts and feeders and drinkers. So that's a different story, but we didn't find any tail biting and we didn't find any movement disorders in those 2 farms. So that's interesting, but then they are skipped from the main analysis after that. So I just wanted to show that we have something to learn from the outdoor farms, even if we're not supposed to have only outdoor farms in the future. And also, I forgot to mention that also straw bedding resulted in very little tail biting or bite marks on the tail, and they have also had very little bite marks on ears, so it shows that it's more stimulating environment. If we go back to the effects of group size and animal density on proportion of pigs per pen with bite marks, we see here that a trend that bite marks on ears and bite marks on the rest of the body declines with increasing group size, which was according to predictions. We also see a trend towards fewer bite marks on the body if floor space per individual is increased. But then again, there were very few farms that had really large space per individual in the indoor systems. But it's nice then, I think that every field survey should be accompanied with experimental work. So we have done a number of experiments to support this. And one is where we compared small groups to larger groups in an experimental setup where they have exactly the same management and exactly the same type of environment. Then we compare 9 pigs versus 18 pigs, and they have exactly the same space per individual. And there we see very clear differences. They have much fewer bite marks on ears, fewer bite marks on the tail, and fewer bite marks on the body in the larger groups, exactly as predicted. We also found something very interesting that's not so easy to explain, because we follow them from the very beginning and we monitored them in the middle of the finishing period, and then we did the same just before slaughter, and then we see that bite marks decreased over time in the large groups, whereas this was the opposite in small groups. I don't have any logic explanation for that, or I have speculations, but I haven't gone too deep into that yet. We also saw that when we did another experiment where we actually compared 1.5 square meter per pig floor space to 1 square meter per pig in the exact same environment, then we saw that the higher density situation resulted in more bite marks on the ears and more bite marks on the tail, in fact, whereas there was no difference in the bite marks on body, I think, if I remember correctly, or the trend was the same. And we also saw that from the start to the end of the finishing period, we saw that lameness increased, bite marks declined, but tail biting prevailed on the same level in those two densities. In these experiments, we did not have any clear effects on daily weight gain, but we didn't have any effect of group size, and we didn't have any effect of density on daily weight gain. But in the group size study, we had more feeding days in the larger groups. So it took them 3 more days to feed the pigs to have the same weight in the larger group compared to the small groups. So if you go to the production variables, let's see if we see that in this field survey, now I'm back to the field survey again. We see that the daily weight gain per pig declined with increasing group size. This was significant. And we also saw that proportion of pigs per pen with bite marks on tail declined. Daily weight gain per pig declined with increasing proportion of pigs with bite marks on tail. So tail biting is associated with a lower weight gain, which is very interesting for the farmers, because then you can actually calculate how much does it cost to have a lower weight gain, because we can also find the precise difference in weight gain. So tail biting is actually costly, because the pig farmers, their income comes from growth of these pigs. So that's quite neat, I think. We also found that daily weight gain per pig for farms using dry feed was higher than farms using wet feed, which is goes well along with what the advices from the industry find in practice. So I'm not sure why, but this is what we find. So in conclusion, we can say that fear of novel human in this human approach test that we used increased with increasing group size, which was more or less what we predicted. Percentage of pigs or proportion of pigs with ear and body bite marks declined with increasing group size, but there was no effect on bite marks on tail. And proportion of bite marks on the body increased with floor space, which was as predicted. None of the other variables increased, or none of the other bite marks increased with when floor space was declined. There was a greater proportion of pigs with bite marks on tail was associated with lower daily weight gain. And daily weight gain declined with increasing group size in our field survey. We did not find that in our experimental work. So I think it depends on how the environment is designed, not just the group size and space per se, but how is the environment? I mean, how is it designed in other perspectives? Farms using dry food had a higher daily weight gain than farms using wet feed. That was all from me today. Thank you.
Thank you for a really nice presentation, Lisa. And I let it just go because we have a time, because one presentation was not presented, so we have a good time. And if you have some question, Adroldo is raising his hand. So.
Adroldo Zanella, University of São Paulo. Lisa, I'm curious to know, how did you recruit the farms? How did you find these farms? What was your criteria?
Yeah, we have, like I said, we have a very close collaboration with industry. So the advisors from the Nortura helped us to find these farms. We had some selection criteria, which was the 4 regions, because we know that there are regional differences. But it was the company that helped us with this. Yeah. It's a question.
You have one question back there.
Thank you very much for this really important work. And I'm Tina Leb from Austria, and we are starting the journey similar to you with the industry, but starting much with less space per pig. So yeah. I'm just wondering what do you, when you ask the advisors or people about the future, what they can imagine, what are they saying? How far do they want to go, or how do they perceive this? Or yes. How would the pen look like?
Well, the picture looks like we try to convince them to think about larger groups so that we can have loose housing systems that they have the different functions in the different areas, less pen fittings. But the farmers have been very resistant because they think they won't lose the control of individuals. But in fact, we have now shown in the number of different studies, we also taken the industry for some visits to Sweden, for instance, where they have access to outdoors. So I think the farmers are ready for a big change, and we do see a big change coming in Norway, also from the government side. So I think a lot of farmers are now thinking about actually giving them access to outdoors. I don't think it will develop fast, but I think larger groups, more varied environments, more enriched environments. And I think 1 square meter is too little according to our results. So, but then again, it's too expensive to build a huge house or indoor system in Norway. It's really expensive. So the alternative is to make easier housing, and at least for finishing pigs, because they can actually handle cold temperatures and winter time as well. So a few farmers are now actually developing access to outdoors, but where they use the farm, but they have developed an outdoor area where they can choose to go in or out. I think that's, or at least I hope that's the direction we're heading for. But I mean, I've been wrong before. I've been working with welfare for more than 25 years now, so, and it's not moving quickly. Yeah.
And also having two fences to control our, yeah. Do we have next question? Yes, we do.
Oh. Thank you. Thank you for your presentation, Helene van der Weert from the Netherlands. The information you found from the field study with regards to the tail biting and potential causes was very interesting and probably in line with the literature. I was just wondering, because you were collecting data on the tails, did you also look at to the provision of enrichment on the farms? Because I think Norway requires that as well as Norwegian legislation.
We have looked at many things: litter, type of rooting material, frequency of giving rooting material, and Marco has presented a poster on air quality and defecation pattern of the pigs. And we have a lot of data. I think we have planned like 10 papers from this work. So yeah, we have data on rooting material, and the preliminary results show that the impact of rooting material and litter is stronger than what we see on these social factors. So I think that the quality of the space should receive more attention than just space per se.
Yeah, I agree.
And how we design the pens and how the pigs are moving in the system and these things. So I think we're heading towards more complex environments, or I hope so.
I hope so too.
Yeah. So you're gonna grill me now?
Time, yeah. I have to. Your
barbecue.
So, do we have one last question or not? No.
No.
So, thank you very much, Ingelisa.
Thank you.
So, I'm welcoming Guru Ozdal. She is from Norway as well, and Anemalia, and she's going to present some exciting data, what they collected, and they are working on the chickens. So I think it's going to be really nice.
It's a bit slow. Okay, it's late in the afternoon, even for the computer. So yeah, we'll give it a second.
Yeah. Wake up.
Well, perfect. Thank you so much. And thank you all for being here. I'll try to make it worth your while. I know it's late in the afternoon. We had a brilliant day with a lot of interesting talks. So I'm here to tell you about a study that we did on perch use in commercial broiler breeder pullet hens. So just to narrow it down for you, it's the broiler breeders, so the parents of the broilers, it's the pullet period, so the young birds, and it's only the hens. So the background, just to give you a quick background to this study, is, as I'm sure you're all aware of, perching, as this bird is doing on the picture, is an important behavioral need for laying hens. And tons of studies have been done showing how important it is for the welfare of the laying hen to have access to these perches. And based on this knowledge, EU and many other countries as well have implemented regulations stating that all laying hens must have access to 15 centimeters perch each. Now, the broiler breeder, they are the same species as laying hens, but most countries do not have a regulation giving them perches, and in commercial facilities, it's not often perches placed for the birds. Some countries, and including Norway, have now decided that all broiler breeders must also have access to perches. So that means that the farmer are asking us, okay, what kind of perches? Where should we place them? How high? What kind of material? So there's a big gap of knowledge here. There's been a few studies showing that broiler breeders, they do use perches when they have access to them. But another study also found that when given the choice between a platform, so an elevated platform, and perches, they tend to prefer the platforms. And in the commercial facility today, broiler breeders have these elevated platforms already today. So perch height also seemed to matter more for the broiler breeders. So it needs to be at least 5 centimeters and probably higher. So we needed more information about how high should these perches be. When it comes to materials, so whether it's plastic or steel or wooden perch, one study found that for the laying hen pullets, so again, relevant for our study on the young birds, they seem to prefer the flat and wide perches. So we took that into consideration. Furthermore, perching increased with age in pullets. So from kind of thinking back to the natural behavior of poultry, the first couple of weeks they would spend with the hen kind of in bushes. So they don't really perch that much, but they do increase their perching with age. So we wanted to know how early do the farmer need to place these perches. One study found also that lighter hybrids perch more. So we know that several countries now have faster growing, slower growing broiler hybrids. So we needed to also investigate that. Keelbone deviation and keelbone fracture. It's a well-known welfare issue in laying hens. Less is known in broiler breeders, but we needed to make sure that by giving them access to perches, we didn't increase the number of these deviations. So that's kind of a bent curve on the keel, or keelbone fractures. Footpad dermatitis, you might be aware that that's a big welfare challenge for broilers. Again, less is known for broiler breeders, but we needed to include it to make sure that our perches didn't increase footpad dermatitis prevalence. So we actually had 4 aims of this study. We wanted to investigate the overall use of perches by broiler breeders during the rearing period. So that means 0 to 18 weeks. At 18 weeks, the birds are sent to the laying facility. We wanted to investigate preferences for different perch types. I'll show you those in a second, and different heights. Effect of hybrids on their perching behavior and preference, and also whether the perches affected important health indicators. All right, so how did we do this? We had 4 commercial breeder flocks. So it was 2 flocks with Hubbard and 2 flocks with Ross 308. It was done March to August last year, so it was both during COVID and during bird influenza. So we couldn't visit the farm as often as we wanted to. Now each flock had 7,500 hens, which is the maximum amount of hens a Norwegian farmer is allowed to have, which is perfect for researchers because all flocks are then very standardized. In each flock, there were 3 groups of hens, so 2,500 per group. And that's also how it's typically done. So we didn't need to change any management. So one was the A-frames. Those are the ones on the picture to the right. I'll show you a better picture soon. The second group in each flock was the siesta perch. I'll show you that as well. And the third group was control, so no perch. So the A-frame, it's based on a big Dutchman production. It's an A-rack metal, is what it's called. So you see it's 150 centimeters long. The lowest perch is 35 centimeters and the highest perch is 95 centimeters. So in each A-frame group, there were 4 of these A-frames with the different materials placed in different places on all 4. So we had a plastic perch, we had a wooden perch, we had a round steel perch and a square steel perch. So this is how it would typically look like. You would see the plastic perch on the bottom left, and then you have the square steel, the round steel, and the wooden perch. The siesta perch is another big Dutchman production. It's 15 centimeters high and 3 meters long, and it's plastic. And we placed that directly in the litter. So that's how it would look like. We had 3 of those in each siesta group. All right, so the observation, as I said, this was during COVID and bird flu, so we needed the farmer actually to take pictures for us. So they took pictures of each perch right before the light went out at week 2, 5, 7, 10, and 15, where I counted the number of birds per perch. Then we went to each flock at week 6 and 12, put up cameras and recorded the perching behavior for 1 hour during the light period, scoring number of birds every 5 minutes on each perch. Then at week 16, we did a health recording, scoring 30 birds per group, so 90 birds per flock for football dermatitis, keel bone deviation, and keel bone fracture using the welfare quality scoring system. All right, so here are the results from this study. So what this figure shows on the x-axis, you have the week of age, and the y-axis is the number of birds per meter perch. So the perching increased with age in both hybrids, but you see that at week 2, so the gray and the yellow bars are for the siesta perch. So at week 2, none of the birds were on the A-frame perch at all. The siesta was mostly used in the beginning. And Hubbards perched more than Ross birds. Now, based on the video analysis, we could see basically the same pictures as on the picture from the farmer, that perching tended to increase with age in both hybrids. Hubbards perched more than Ross. Again, the siesta was used most when the birds were young. So now we're going into just the A-frame group, right? So we wanted to see, okay, what kind of material do the birds prefer? So what this figure shows is, so for the blue and the gray lines, that's the Hubbard, and the orange and the yellow on the bottom, that's the Ross. So basically what we see, there's no preference for the height. So when they started using the A-frames, they could easily use just the 35 and the 95 centimeters high perches. And it didn't matter whether the steel or the plastic or the wooden perch, or whether it was round or square, where it was placed. They perched on all types of perches. And also the use of the A-frames increased for the Hubbards, but it did not increase for the Ross. They tended to just stick with the siesta perch until the end of the pulled period. The health indicators, we did not at 16 weeks observe any case of keel bone deviation or keel bone fracture. So the method that we did was using palpation, which we know underestimated, but at 16 weeks we didn't expect any keel bone fracture anyway. Which it's nice that we didn't find any. When it comes to footpad dermatitis, so this is the figure or the results for them. So you see the Ross birds in the different perching groups closest to me and the Hubbard. The analysis did not detect any significant differences between groups or hybrids, but you can kind of see that there's a numerical difference. And again, it's only 4 flocks, so we want to repeat the study with a bigger sample size to verify these results. All right, to sum it all up for you and to conclude, we see that both hybrids perched more with age and that the siesta was definitely used most early on. And I mean, you can tell by the difference. I guess it's harder for the very young pullets to get up on those 35 centimeters high perches while the siesta is used. And the farmer told us, we didn't get any pictures until week 2, but they told us they're there from day 2. They're quite quick to get up on the siesta perch. As I said, there's no preference for the different height or different perch types. So when the farmer asks us, okay, but do we need plastic? Should we have wooden perches? Because we know that the NGOs, they are kind of pushing us to use the wooden perch, which is, it's difficult to clean and the farmers are skeptical to wood. So it's easier with the plastic or the steel. So you can kind of do what the farmer wants. We found that the Hubbard perched more than Ross, which was what we expected. The Ross used siesta more, so it's not one size fits all. Your management and your perch kind of and your perch layout need to be fitted to the hybrid. To give a quick point to the perch utilization. Theoretically, at 5 weeks of age, the shoulder width of each bird is about 5 centimeters. So on a meter of perch, you could have 20 birds. But we never had more than 3, 4, 5 birds per meter perch, giving kind of a 25% or 7.5% perch utilization for the different hybrids. And my take on that is that we didn't provide enough perch for all birds to perch at the same time. And these are synchronous animals. They want to do what the rest of the flock. It might not be the most adaptive to be one of few birds perching when all the rest is on the floor. So again, we wanted to repeat the study with giving every bird the opportunity to perch at the same time. Another thing is that we did the observation during the light period because the farmers don't have night optics on their mobile phones, basically. So we needed to have them take pictures. Again, we want to do the same in the dark period, and we actually have. That's again me going out into the farms after the light went out. But yeah, we should do that also with the pullets. So that's kind of a limitation to the study. We did not find any negative health effects on the purchase, and they started using it quite early on. So we encourage the farmers to provide purchase for the birds, both as a physical training and to learn how to use purchase as adults. So I want to thank my co-authors who are all here today, the foundation for giving us money to do this, and the beautiful birds for allowing us to observe them. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Guru, and thanks to Inger-Lisa as well, because you took a little bit more time. So because we have one dropout, so I think we are now on the schedule, and this is what is important. But we have a question. So Bas.
Yeah, Bas Rodenburg. Thanks for a nice talk. I was wondering, this morning we heard about the platforms for broilers, that they also prefer them in some cases. So have you considered also using platforms or?
Yes, so in the pullet facilities, at least in Norway, I don't know how they have platforms actually to train the hens to go up on the elevated platform in the laying facility, because that's where the water and the feed are. So they have platform, but they would still use purchase. So yeah, I should have mentioned that they all had platforms in all the 3 groups, but they would still use the purchase. Yeah.
Am I allowed the second small point or not?
Yes.
Yeah, I will be quick. But for the keel bone damage, I was interested that you explored that as well. But I'm probably you are aware of the Danish studies on keel bone damage.
Yes.
In the layer breeders, it seems that in the breeders there's less lower incidence of keel bone damage than in the laying hens. That might be related to onset of egg laying, or so it could be interesting to see if this is also the case in broiler breeders.
I'll give you a teaser. We're on it. So we're actually, we're investigating keel bone damage in the breeders.
So Inger-Lisa is the next one.
Hi, Inger-Lisa Andersen from Norway. Thank you for a very nice talk. I was wondering, maybe you said it in the beginning, but what is the reasoning why you chose those particular 2 alternative perch types? Are they commercially available? And the second question is, in the A form perch, you have different levels. Do they prefer to be on the lower level, or do you see individual differences in preference of heights?
Yeah, thanks for good questions. First of all, yes, we went for the commercially available perch types. So it's not like I'm a big Dutchman enthusiast or anything. We just went for whatever the farmer can actually go out and buy. And for the second, on the A-frames, we didn't see, and I didn't follow individual animals. That would be really nice. We just scored a number of birds on the different heights and on the different types. And as soon as they started using the A-frames, they kind of, when they got up on the first level, they seemed to easily get up on the next level as well. So we didn't see more birds on the lower than the higher. It was all random. Yeah. So it didn't matter. The height or the perch type didn't affect number of birds per meter perch. Yeah.
We have time just for one more question, so then we can ask.
Hi, Guru. Helene van der Weert from the Netherlands. Thank you. Nice talk. I just wondered about can you hear me? Is it on? Oh, the perch type preference, the material. Where do you think you offered enough perch length to strongly conclude that? Because, for example, if they all wanted to sit on the wooden perches, could they actually all sit on the wooden perches?
Yeah, good question. So we had, for the 4 A-frames, it would be 6 meter perch per material. So 1.5 meter of wooden perch in the 4 different A-frames. So, and that would fit 80 birds kind of theoretically at 5 weeks, because then they would be 5 centimeters shoulder to shoulder. So no, we could not allow all birds to perch at the same time at the different materials. Yeah.
I hope everybody was satisfied with the answers. So I was
I hope
actually.
so too, yes.
Also with the presentation, I was really satisfied as well. So we can say we can finish now this session.
Thank you, everybody.